Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
I love that line so much. I can't help it. Welcome everyone to yet another episode of the Top 10 Favorite and from what we believe are the greatest performances by some of the greatest actors in all of cinema. Once again, as usual, we start from 10 and then completely box our way, lightsaber our way, all the way up to number 1. And I know for my part, I have seen every film attainable of every artist here, so every list is always authentic, accurate, passionate, and sincere. So, everybody, I am so very excited because once again I have one of my dear friends, one of the greatest artists I've ever met, and who is just a blessing in this world. I love him so much. Here with me again, joining me, is the ever amazing Stephon Petway. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, thank you for having me. Always fun to be back. Always a pleasure seeing you. And always a pleasure talking about life and creativity and just inspiring, man. So thank you for having me as always.
No, as always for you, man. Today we are talking about, in honor of the great, I don't care what Google says, it is Happy Black History Month, even though I love that, it's not just 1 month, it's every month. It's a great time to talk about one of our dear favorite actors, the ever so amazing EGOT himself, James Earl Jones.
Yes. His history.
Yes.
Alex, it's not even unbeknownst. It is truly a story and a journey of a man who used to be a stutterer and still stutters.
Yes.
Up until he died. Mm-hmm. But he had a better control and a better understanding and a passion for the art that he was able to channel the stutter into the art to make these amazing stage, film, TV, and voiceover gigs that we know to this day. Mm-hmm. And that's what led him to becoming an EGOT winner.
Yeah,
an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony.
And 2 Tonys at that.
2 Tonys, actually. Yep. You got me with that one. Yep.
Oh, my goodness. First winning the Tony for The Great White Hope back in 1969.
Powerful piece.
Such an amazing one. And in 1987 for, of course, one of August Wilson's many masterpiece plays, Fences.
I like you. You is the biggest fool I ever saw. It is my job. It is my responsibility. You understand that? A man got to take care of his family. You live in my house. You sleep your behind on my bedclothes. You put my food in your belly because you are my son. You are my flesh and blood, not because I like you. It is my duty to take care of you.
So I did get a chance to see Fences archived at Lincoln Center Library, and you feel the vibrations through that screen. You felt every pause, every gesture, every moment. Even, Courtney B. Vance, the amazing, talented, wonderful Courtney B. Vance.
Yes. Every artist that James has worked with, like every one of them have always said how amazing it was to work with him. Growing up, James Earl Jones was very shy. Well, especially growing up in Mississippi at a time where, of course, Jim Crow South, very strong and very terrifying. Being raised by his grandparents, had no father figure.
Yes.
Had no real mother figure since she went out and got work. So it was up to his grandparents to bring him up. And then making the move to Michigan, where finally got that opportunity to study in school. Very fascinated by theater. But what happens, especially around the time when the Korea War breaks out? Oh, you go ahead and join the army, don't you?
Yep, you do. Mm-hmm. But joining that army, he still maintained that passion for the arts, and it also gave him a great sense of discipline, which, if you would actually think about it, Alex, artists, we have to be athletes of emotion.
Yes.
But to be an athlete of an emotion requires pure, concentrated discipline, militant focus. And James possessed it. He had that commanding presence of how he would sit, how he would move, how he would direct himself, how he would direct others, how he would lean in, how he would get you to lean into him, etc. There was a militant focus and a discipline, but yet a warmth about him. So it's like he had the wisdom and the understanding and the encouragement of his grandparents, who were maternal and just so earthly and grounded in him. With his militant background, he was untouchable. Like, God, I would have given anything to see his Macbeth.
I watched his Shakespeare in the Park performance on the Broadway Theater Archive DVD of King Lear, like nonstop, over and over and over again, just because from start to finish, he was so captivating. Never had I seen an actor play King Lear that made you love King Lear so much, you know?
What was so powerful about James too, especially during that era of the Renaissance and that movement in New York for Black and brown artists, not many of them were allowed to be on Broadway. So most Black and brown artists, if they couldn't work off Broadway, or if they couldn't, they had to go off.
Yeah.
They had to do theater up in Harlem. They had to go do theater in Brooklyn. They had to go do, which is what we're doing now. But it was this feeling of, we didn't have a choice back in those days. It was, you either worked or you didn't work. And for James, it's funny, he worked so hard, but yet he was kind of, in the 70s, the industry and his own people were kind of giving him some flack because they felt that he was not playing African Americans with a certain level of dignity or a certain level of like presentationalism. We don't want to see Black and brown people depicted in this negative light. We want to see them poised. We want to see presidents. We want white America and the establishments that are stopping Black and brown people from ascending. We want them to say, okay, these people do look like this. These people can present themselves like this. But for James, I felt like any of us, he wasn't so much about playing the full, beautiful representation of a human being. He was about playing the bold, ugly truth of a human being, which makes that human being beautiful and authentic and right. I mean, Alex, to discover the fact that he pretty much helped to usher in Sesame Street. James, you were the first guest and celebrity next to Carol Burnett, the great Carol Burnett. Like, Mr. Jones, do you know how dope you are, sir?
Seriously.
And not even gonna say he was the first like celebrity voiceover actor, but he was, I feel like, the first distinguished voiceover actor that every celebrity wanted to even emulate.
Oh, very much so.
The warmthness in his voice, the tone, the commanding, I can't even do a good James Earl Jones impression. What is it? Then let them work. I'm talking to my son. It's just the roundedness and the shape of his voice and
man, I'm so excited to get started within this top 10. And just to reiterate, everyone, we have not discussed our own top 10s. Obviously, he gives his own and I give my own, and so we have not consulted about this. This will be a reaction on top of just sharing through the course of his whole trajectory and his whole journey what has been the most iconic, what has been the most impactful, what has spoken the loudest within our hearts and within the whole universe. Let's get started, my friend. So here are the top 10 best performances of the great James Earl Jones. What is your choice at number 10, my good sir?
This one is going to be out of left field because I know most people would say it's more of a recommended one. The Sandlot, man.
Really?
Yes.
Perfect.
All right, Mr. Myrtle. In this character, James, it's a cameo in the movie. I mean, if anybody's familiar with The Sandlot, I know we are. It's pretty much a story about a group of young kids. One kid named Smalls, and he meets with these guys on a baseball field. They teach him the game. They all become besties. And then one day, Smalls decides to use a baseball from his father's collection or stepdad's collection, played by the great Dennis Leary. And they play, and the ball is hit out of the field onto the neighbor's property. It's a junkyard that has a really scary dog watching and protecting over it. But it turns out this baseball that they use was actually signed by Babe Ruth. You know, one of the greatest, the great Bambino. Like, he was one of the greatest baseball players to ever play in the league. He changed the game. And the whole journey of the back half of this movie is these guys trying every trick that they can to get that ball back from the junkyard, until eventually they have a standoff between them and the dog, and then finally they knock on the door and they meet the owner, and it's James Earl Jones. He is a blind man who runs a junkyard, who also just so happened to be a great ball player, who knew Babe Ruth and all of the great players of those times. What I loved about the movie, I think it was my first time ever witnessing an actor who was able-bodied play a character with a disability on camera.
Oh, yeah.
Like, physically, I never seen an actor portray blindness on camera in the way James did it. It was so subtle, yet it was so natural. He was a black man. He was living in the 60s at the time, or I believe it was the 50s. And he was isolated from the world. Nobody really knew him. So the fact that these young men came over there, took care of his dog, understood sports, took the time to actually get to know him, it just goes to show, like, the layers of don't ever judge a book by its cover, and sometimes you just gotta go to the neighbor's house and knock on the door.
Very much so.
What it is about that film is he plays a moment in that movie that makes the film just feel more heartfelt and organic. And it's, like you said, it's just a part of my childhood.
Yeah.
Like, that film is my childhood. Like, my mother and I, we sat and watched The Sandlot, like, all the time when it would come out. So it's just,
That's amazing, man. For me, number 10, this might throw you off. It was very hard, but this whole list, and I have to say, was completely difficult. I can't even tell you. But number 10 for me is The Great Coming to America. It's just, I love it so very much. I wish it even could be higher.
King Joffrey Joseph of Zamunda.
Yes,
I think that's how you pronounce his name. Yeah.
And same as, like, how he is such a caring father. However, everything about him, I mean, once you see James Earl Jones, you just think king. He is literally king.
Yeah.
Actually, and then all props to the costume designer, the wardrobe department within Coming to America. My goodness. The fact that he has this whole, like,
lion that
literally has Simba, like, draped all over him, right on his chest. It is incredible. The latter half, when he actually follows Eddie Murphy to New York, everything that goes down is absolutely hilarious.
What is this? McDowell's?
It's a place over on Queens Boulevard. I think he works there.
My son works.
My son works. In a way, James really was the straight man in the movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was the straight, by the book, everything. But I think that's what made the performance so funny.
Yes, exactly.
Because it's so absurd that it's like, my son works. It's like, why is that funny? He needs to soil his royal oats. I did this and I did this back behind a stable one day. I understand my son. I was like, it was just so goofy and giddy and fun. Man.
And everyone has always said, like, he had, like, the best sense of humor. Like, he was one of the funniest guys.
Dude, that was actually my biggest discovery of watching all the films that I was watching of his. I was like, man, this guy is really funny.
Really?
And it got to a point where even as I was watching his performance, I was like, wait, I do this.
Yeah.
When I'm doing comedy, I do this, like, weird thing with my eyes, or I always got to put a little smile or grin on my face. Like, it's like men of his stature, they know their size. They know how intimidating they can come off or be. So to disarm you from the size and the gravitas of my voice, I must be playful. I must be giddy. I must become the clown. He always gave off dad vibes, dad energy, playful but serious, stern, fair but cautious.
Yes.
9. You sent me this one and you told me I needed to check this one out, and I was more surprised at the research and going down the rabbit hole. It was Matewan.
Yes.
His character, Few Clothes Johnson.
Yes. Which is such a authentic and just very fascinating name.
Well, his character, this was back in the 1914?
Yes. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Leaning into that time period, leaning into the 1920s, the mine worker union wars. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. His character, Few Clothes Johnson, comes from Alabama. He's coming up to the mines to work, to build a better life for himself, because let's be honest, where he was from, he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't able to provide and take care of his family. And as a man, he wanted to be able to provide and stand tall and do what his family and his mother and God wanted him to do.
Right.
What I loved about Few Clothes Johnson is the moment he enters and gets off that train, he questions the establishment.
Right.
He doesn't, he clocks everything. He doesn't conform. He doesn't just go with what they tell him. He immediately says, why are we getting off here?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing this? And then even when the situation happens where they didn't want people of color in their mines and in their towns anyway, the fight that broke out, how Few Clothes, he did everything that he could to divert the fight before he had to put up his dukes and get down and do what he had to do as well.
Right.
And then the fact that he had the boldness to walk through that town in the middle of the night as a man of color being watched by the townspeople and the police who could have strung him up and hung him.
Right.
The fact that he infiltrates a meeting of the mine workers and literally tells them, is there room for me? Is there room for my people? I want more. You can call me a nigger if you want to, but I've been called worse. But I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. If you call me a nigger, I'll call you a peckerwood or a cracker and all that other stuff.
They calls me Few Clothes. No, I didn't come here looking for no trouble. The men's got to eat.
So why don't you go eat back where you come from?
They told me that there was jobs here.
Go home, nigger.
Goddamn scab.
You watch your mouth, Peckerwood. I've been called nigger, and I can't help that the way white folks is, but I ain't never been called no scab. And I ain't fixing to start up now. I go ton for ton loading coal with any man here. When I do, I expect the same dollar for the same work.
The fact that he stepped in a lion's den and actually was willing to stare down the beast in the face and say, this is what I need in order to survive, and this is what my people need, and if you help us, we are with you. Mm-hmm. That's some powerful stuff, Al. Like, there was, to watch that film, one thing to not even know about this story and this history kills me already, but the fact that James just played a moment in it that represented my culture and the part that we took in it, along with working with the Italians, along with working with, it was a story that kind of showed you that blacks, browns, Latinos, Italians, all of us, we're not that different. We're all together and united, and we're just trying to make a better life for ourselves and our families. But the system will never see us as equal to them. They want us to do the minimum and just get by. Even in the scene when they were showing the black men their quarters and where they'll be staying, it's going to be taken out of your check if you do this. It's going to be taken out of your check if you do that. And it's almost like, so what are they going to make? What money were they going to have? Like, everything that you're charging them, they're barely even making that.
Yeah.
So what did you bring them up there for? You're just trying to get free labor out of them.
Yep, exactly. Just abuse and abuse and abuse, and
it touched me. It touched me deep in a way that I never expected, and I had to do more research on that one.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I'm so glad. Yeah, number 9 could be Surprising one for many. But number 9 for me is a made-for-television movie he starred in called Heatwave, which came out in 1990. It was one of the films he received an Emmy for Best Supporting Actor. The only Emmy the film received, which is kind of a shame because it's very much a powerful film based on a true story about a young black reporter who came to LA with his family and covering the time of the 1965 Watts riots. And Blair Underwood plays a reporter. He's wonderful in it. And James Earl Jones plays Junius, who is just that great mentor figure for Blair Underwood, who has such a past, who has been within the town, has been around Watts. He knows this neighborhood. He knows what has made his community tick. And of course, all the prejudice, all the harassments, that the underbelly about Watts specifically, and just about LA. If you look the long history of LA, all the constant cases, constant incidents, just the whole history of police brutality that has happened all throughout the LA community. And James gives such, as he always does, gave such a gravitas to it. And he always was there to give the heart to whatever story. Every scene, he has one scene in particular that's
Right, or much, yep.
Yep, and he's just looking out through the gates.
Now and everything about me. I tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen.
Come on, Juice. Let's go home. It's gonna be okay.
You're too young to remember, but Central Avenue used to be the jewel of Los Angeles.
Okay.
Spots like Club Alabama, Nemo, Downbeat. They come down here to see America's royalty. Duke, Accountant Earl. Ellington, Hines Basie, Lena Horne, Lady Day. White folk from all over town come down here to swing and bop with the soul folk.
It makes you kind of think, like, because he comes from such a theatrical background too, I start to wonder, it's like, if when he's getting these projects, or when he got these projects, I don't believe James was auditioning as time went on. I start to wonder, it's like, hey James, do you actually require the writers of each of the projects that you do to give you a monologue? Because you really want to.
The stipulation in his contract every time is just,
I have to have a monologue.
Tell me, at your number 8, what is that one?
So you went the TV movie route. I wanted to match that TV movie route. And I found a beautiful film of his called Percy and Thunder.
Nice.
Yeah, that Percy and Thunder, he plays Percy. James is a trainer and a manager that is training, actually, Courtney B. Vance, whom was his son in Fences. And ultimately, he's trying to train Courtney B. Vance's character to get him a title shot, because unfortunately, Percy himself lost. He pretty much missed out on his opportunity to get a shot at the title. So I can tell he's carrying that chip on his shoulder, but he's also trying to protect his fighter from the grueling business, which is boxing itself. Shady promoters, shady deals, what you might have to give up and what you have to sell yourself to get the title, and kind of who's in cahoots with whom.
Right.
So ultimately, James is trying to protect Courtney B. Vance from the great Billy D. Williams.
The great Mr. Maltman himself. No precursor, obviously, but I'm just like, the fact that you have both Darth Vader and Lando Calrissian in the same film, it's amazing.
It was my first time watching Billy D. Williams lose his cool in a movie.
Yeah.
I'll sue this boy from here to kingdom come. He'll never fight again!
It was different.
Yeah.
One of the lines, he says, "I'm not your minister, I'm your manager." When I heard that line and when I watched this film, it just reminded me that this character is the opposite of Troy. From Fences. Our business is fighting, and sorry don't belong nowhere near it. Troy never gave up, but Percy did, and passed on his opportunity, and he never forgave himself for it. So everything that Percy does in this film is to protect his fighter from not making the same errors and mistakes that he did in his past. But what's fascinating is when I do the comparisons of Percy and Troy. Troy was a man who had to figure it out on his own too.
Yeah.
Troy made a lot of mistakes, but Troy went about teaching his son lessons in a different manner.
Right.
Troy was so hard on his son that he pushed his son away further. Percy was hard on Thunder, but Percy wasn't trying to alienate Thunder. He was just trying to show Thunder, like, be careful, there are snakes out here.
Hey, I'm a man trying to get something done here. You ain't. Go home.
Pee-wee got some good news.
Pee-wee ain't got squat. I ought to bust Pee-wee in the mouth for messing with my fighter.
I think you ought to listen to what Pee-wee got to say first.
I don't give a damn what Pee-wee got to say. Keep the streets on. We going.
I think as I watched the film, it felt like I was watching, what if Troy and Corey actually made it?
Right.
What if Troy actually was able to change? What if Troy was able to really open his heart and no longer let the ghost of his past dictate and define him?
On tonight. We got a man to knock out tonight. No matter what games the weasels play outside the ring, what happens inside is pure. That's your edge. Oh, come on.
Number 8 for me, I don't know if you've seen it, man, but it is the 1999 now new classic, The Annihilation of Fish. This film has a crazy history. So, written and directed by the great Charles Burnett. And if you know that name, one of cinema's like greats, who went to UCLA, and he's the man behind To Sleep with Anger, starring Danny Glover, with an amazing cast. Also did the amazing film Killers of Sheep, which also got amazing praise. But Annihilation of Fish has a very crazy history because the film was never distributed. The film premiered at film festivals, but no studio wanted to pick it up because it was such a small little film. So this year, like literally this month, my friend, The Annihilation of Fish got a distribution deal. The UCLA Film Institute were able to find it, preserve it, and restore it, and it's been in distribution in cinemas all over New York. And I was very lucky to catch it at the Brooklyn Music Academy, and they showed it, and I was able to watch that film from start to finish. And the New York Times did a review of like, this film is finally getting its flowers, it's finally getting seen, being now 26 years old. It never saw the light of day, and it's such a shame because James Earl Jones' performance in it is so endearing, so funny, and so absurd, and so heartbreaking. So he and the great Lynn Redgrave, Vanessa's sister, both have mental challenges, specifically where Lynn, she's in love with the great opera composer Puccini. And so but he's completely invisible, but not invisible to her. So she's trying to get married to Puccini every chance she gets, but every single, like, even the City Hall are just completely turning her away because, like, you're a crazy person. And she's like, oh my God, Puccini, we have to break up. Nobody is letting us get married. I'm sorry, this is the end of it. And so she goes off on her merry way. She takes up board in this boarding house ran by Margot Kidder. God bless her. But James Earl Jones just got released from an institution because his whole life he's been wrestling with a demon. Like physically wrestling with a demon.
So I have now used the head woman. I wrestle a demon. That's what.
So he's released on his own, and he takes up that same board. He takes up board in that same boarding house. They have opposite rooms, but as fate would have it, guides them together. She becomes his referee while he's wrestling this demon. And Charles Burnett, the director, gives us such little glimpses and little ends on this joke, but yet endearing togetherness, I want to say, because every time that James Earl Jones is literally physically doing his own stunt work, mind you, in his like early 80s, like doing the stunt work of wrestling with this demon who's invisible. Every time he throws the demon out of the window, it hits the trees, and the trees do a little whoosh. You're letting the audience in on this world for these two, because they both live in their own universes and how it's brought them together as they become romantically involved. You know, I don't want to expand or spoil any more of it, because if you do get the chance of actually seeing the Annihilation of Fish in theaters, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Because now I'm only hoping that now that it's out there in the world, it will come to streaming, hopefully one day, because it absolutely deserves it.
I wanted to.
Bring me now to your lovely number 7.
Number 7, we already spoke about it, so it ranked a little higher for me, but it's Coming to America.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, just to be brief on it, it's just, as I said, James was royal. He was stubborn. He was powerful. He was not thinking of others, because, like you said, in the traditional sense. And I also think this goes back to James and his training in the Shakespearean world in classical theater, because many of the characters that James plays royally, that's how royals think.
Yes.
They don't want to change the status. They don't want to change the hierarchy. If it's been done this long, if it's not broken, why do we need to fix this?
Right.
To watch James be so serious and so bubbly and so set in his ways, and then to even have to hear his wife ultimately in the car. She ultimately, I don't know, he never listened to her throughout the whole movie. But it's funny, that final moment as they're getting ready to pack up and head back to Zamunda, you're still not talking to me. And I've heard the saying, heaven have no fury like a woman scorned.
Oh.
And a woman's silence.
Silence is just...
it's painful.
So painful.
I have 3 sisters, sir. And, and I have cousins. I have a lot of female cousins. And I'm a chatterbox. So every now and then I might say something, and I swear they will axe me out. They will freeze me out, and I can be a little needy, so it's just like, hey, talk to me.
Talk to me. Like, what did I do? Come on.
And they'll never tell you. Yeah. They will never tell you.
They're like, it's fine. Like, no, it's not. It's never fine.
That is the beauty and the art of good comedy. Good comedy, it is serious.
Yes.
It is about the timing. It is about the build-up and then the switch.
Mm-hmm. Well, number 7 for me, as hard as it really is, because I love this film so much. I think we all absolutely do. I mean, there's no hiding behind it. But I really had to put Field of Dreams, number 7.
The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball. America has rolled by like an army of steamrollers. It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again. But baseball has marked the time. This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again. Oh, people will come, Ray. People will most definitely come.
The film itself is just everything I love about baseball, and how I love about family. I love about father-son relationships uniting, and how James Earl Jones just plays such a heartwarming and powerful piece to that. And you know what's hilarious, last fun fact, is that James was never really a fan of baseball, ever. He did. So it's hilarious how he was given all these roles that had like such a stance on baseball, like such a love for it, and yet he could care less about the sport, really. And he has that one beautiful final moment when he actually goes into the crop. He had trouble with Phil Alden Robinson, the writer-director, and he's like, so when I go through the crop, what actually happens? And the director was just like, I don't know.
I said, yeah. I asked the same, because my next film was Field of Dreams, and that was the ultimate question that I had in bold. I was like, what happens? Watch the camera, watch the perspective exactly, because it really makes you think. It's like, you don't just disappear in the fields,
right?
If you're alive, the fields are for ghosts.
Right.
So was James's character a ghost the whole time?
Yeah. And he really had unfinished business still.
Yeah, because I mean, his character in the film starts off as a man who's a bit cynical, jaded, angry, has lost all hope and ideas, but he can hear and see everything that Costner's character is hearing, which is like having that sixth sense.
Right.
And somehow he goes on this journey and they wind up on those bleachers watching the players just come in, and he's seeing it. It's like they said, everybody's seeing it but the brother-in-law.
Right.
And then eventually the brother-in-law begins to finally see. Mm-hmm. And then James is, with his beautiful monologue. And yeah, Field of Dreams, I was surprised. I'm fascinated by the fact that it's
rated so high.
On that movie. Yeah.
I love it. Well, on that note, I have to give number 6, Road to Freedom, the Vernon Johns story, based on the true story of the great minister Vernon Johns, who was named as basically the father of the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost the predecessor to Martin Luther King.
Yes.
Gave wave to the uprising and really pumped the fuel to fight back, to stand up for yourself.
Yes.
And it was a made-for-TV film, so it was not given that just exposure. And once again, James reteams with the great Mary Alice, which is always amazing.
Beautiful.
Hence his team staying together. And the final scene is that great sermon that he gives. And once again, we've never really seen anybody that can deliver a monologue or just a speech by James Earl Jones. Like, nobody else has that caliber and power that once he starts, like, you're with him all the way through.
Man, my greatest feeling and experience of James Earl Jones, and I think I've told you this in one of our podcasts, I got to see him.
Yeah.
I got to see him live on stage doing Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, directed by Debbie Allen, starring Terrence Howard, Felicia Rashad, Anika Noni Rose, Giancarlo Esposito.
That is just
I saw him play Big Daddy.
A role that he's always wanted to play, like a dream role he's always wanted to play.
And the fact that he was so excited to play the character, they talked to him in an interview, I think in a 60-minute interview or one of the interviews, and he was just like, yeah, I'm back in the theater. I'm so excited to be here. I can't even wait. I can't wait to get on stage tonight. Like, you can feel that enthusiasm because there's nothing like doing a live play, Alex. Like, you drive the ship. And Terrence Howard used to say, like, because this was his first time really doing a play, played Brick of all characters. He played Brick on Broadway. He had a lot of moments where I think he said he was nervous. He didn't feel like he knew his lines that well, or he would sometimes get too stuck or lost in his head. And he said immediately all he had to do was just look at James, and he knew. He knew where he was. He knew the moments. He knew the scene. Just constant professional. But you only get to that level of greatness on camera if you're working on that darn stage, man.
That's true.
Hands down. You become a better screen actor by not only studying the movies and the genres, but you become a great screen actor by building stamina, and stamina starts on the stage.
1,000%. Amen.